Welcome to the Kids with Big Emotions podcast. I am your host, Andi Clark. This is episode 100, everyone. This is super exciting, a huge milestone in every podcast because getting to 100 means there's a lot of commitment, a lot of time and effort going into this. And we're at about 5,000 downloads as well, which is very exciting. Could not be here without any of you. So thank you all for listening. Thank you all for downloading episodes. Please pass this podcast on to anybody that you feel it may benefit. And I am truly grateful for you. So let's dive into today's episode where we're going to be going over why anxiety in kids is at an all-time high. If you're a parent, you've probably asked yourself, why is my child more anxious than I ever was? If you're a teacher, you've definitely seen it in your students. And if you grew up in a different time, you've likely wondered, how is it that today's kids seem to struggle with anxiety more than we did, even during times of war, financial crisis, and uncertainty? Last week, I was speaking in Puerto Rico with a group of successful CEOs who had exited their companies and they sold their companies. And this one question kept coming up. It was interesting. It was definitely not what I expected when I was speaking to all of these adults. I mean, they knew I worked with kids with big emotions, but I was speaking about stress for them. And they kept coming up to me and asking me, why do kids today have more anxiety than they did during the Cold War? And honestly, it's a valid question. Anxiety rates in kids are really skyrocketing, and the research is still evolving. We are starting to see some clear patterns. By the end of this episode, I hope that you will see anxiety through a completely different lens. I know for me, a lot has shifted through the years of doing research in stress, in sleep, in traumas, in executive functioning. All of these different rabbit holes I've dove into have really shed some light on anxiety and why it's really come more to the forefront than it has in the past. And before we do dive in, though, I do want to be clear that we're not going to be blaming technology. We're not going to be blaming modern life or parents at all. It's really about the awareness. That's my hope from today, is that you get the awareness and more understanding so that we can start taking back control. And I won't be covering all of the reasons because there are many. I will be covering the ones that I have researched and dove into myself and the ones that I have experience with. So let's dive into today's episode. So the one thing is that anxiety isn't just about toughening up our kids. I've heard that one quite a bit. Our kids just need to toughen up. Our kids are so weak nowadays or so soft nowadays. And it's just... we have that side of things. And then we also have the side where others blame social media and assume that completely getting off of social media, completely getting off of all apps, like completely keeping screens from kids is the answer. And I fall somewhere in the middle. I've been interviewed quite often. Right now, I've just been doing actually a couple of interviews already with one major news broadcaster, newspaper in my city that I'm in. And they keep coming back to me, asking me more and more questions because of where I really do stand on screens with that. So this will be hopefully interesting and show you another light on that today. And here's the thing though, anxiety isn't just a mindset. It's actually physiological. It's actually what is happening in your body that can drive anxiety. It can be mental, absolutely. Though even when it's mental, anything that is mentally causing anxiety in your mind, it still is affecting your body physiologically. It's affecting your nervous system. It's affecting your gut. It's affecting different parts of your body, which also affect anxiety. And social media definitely plays a role. Anxiety, as I just said, can be fueled by multiple factors. The thing is that your nervous system is always being taxed. And our environment as well can really affect how our bodies are handling things, and that can bring out a lot of anxiety. So what's really driving this? Let's break down the hidden drivers of anxiety that I've seen in kids and in teens. So I have mentioned the book Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, Haidt. Well, link that. I've also done an episode on their Let Grow Society. And so he dives deep into social media and tech addictions with kids, specifically when screens first came out, when smartphones came out. When we start diving into the research of kids between the age of 11 and 15, the research is phenomenal with their brain development, with what smartphones, how they can really, really affect somebody's brain, especially when they are starting between 11 and 15 with social media. Social media, it didn't just change the way kids interact, it rewired how their brains develop. And his book goes into so much research into that, of which I do love his book. Now, the thing about his book, of what I will get into as well today, is that I don't like how his solution is pretty much getting them off of screens, because I homeschool my kids. My kids are on screens from 9 to 12 every day, Monday to Friday. And when I say I homeschool, I'm up in the office right now recording this episode between 9 and 12. They're downstairs doing their work between 9 and 12 on their computers, on their screens. Screens are a big part of our life. Tech is a huge part of life. If we are not going to learn tech and learn how to use tech in a healthy way, then our kids are going to miss out on so many job opportunities. They're going to be behind on so much in this world today if they are not up and understanding how to use screens and being a part of screens. So I do struggle with the solution for them is to just keep screens away from kids, because I believe that we need to meet in that middle, of which I will be diving about in here. And in his research too, like he talks about, like, apps just aren't addictive. They are literally designed by behavior experts and psychologists to keep us hooked. And this is what I teach my kids all the time when they are getting pulled in. So there was once where my son was starting to spend more and more time in his room. He was not wanting to go see his friends. He was not wanting to go out. And he's 11. This was this past year. And he was really distancing himself. He was also becoming a lot shorter with us. He wasn't eating as much. His anxiety, his anger, his outbursts were completely increasing. I was like, what is going on? And then one day I was like, he's spending so much time in his room, and he was getting a lot of signs of depression and anxiety. I'm like, but he's spending so much time in his room. What's in his room? So I started going through his drawers and found a tablet. It was a tablet that I didn't even know worked anymore. I am shocked that it actually even could run a YouTube video on it. Like, this is an old tablet. And I found out, I went into his log, and he was spending 2-3 hours in the middle of the night watching YouTube videos. And Jonathan Haidt's research does dive into the fact that boys tend to go more YouTube, Reddit, girls tend to go more social media, which is fascinating, because for me, it is Facebook and Instagram that I get sucked into. My other son, it's not actually YouTube. He gets sucked into sciences. He gets sucked into his science classes, which is kind of hilarious. But even his schoolwork becomes addictive for him because he can't get enough of learning science, which is funny in one point. But when he does spend too much time literally watching science videos, he's not getting any of his other work done, and he's getting sucked in that way, which is kind of funny. So I didn't get my son in trouble. I didn't yell at him. I didn't scream. I sat down and went, wow. Do you see how well this company is doing their job? They are paying somebody in their business to keep you pulled in. And we talked about how it pulls you in, going into another one and another one, seeing what you're watching, knowing, because this was our old computer. We didn't have our Google Family link on it where it had a browser history. It was tracking what he was doing. I actually went through it and showed him all of these aspects of this. And we did do a total screen detox on him for 2 weeks. And it took him over a week until the anger died down, the anxiety died down, till he started engaging with us, till he started being fun and happy again. So yes, I did need to do a bit of a detox then. He was on board with it. It wasn't as a punishment, and he knew that. It was because he'd been sucked in, and we talked about how the brain got rewired, and the brain was pulling him, and it would just keep pulling and pulling and pulling. So we needed to go until that pull wasn't there. And once that pull wasn't there, then we brought on the blocking apps. Well, we took that tablet away, and all of his other stuff had blocking apps on it anyways. But he knew from there, if he was able to find ways around the blocking app, we kept that channel open between us. where he would come and say, okay, I'm being pulled into this again, which I'm going to tell you for this child is huge. Like my other child would come and tell me. I was actually surprised when this child came and told me, but I think he has come to realize because we haven't yelled at him or screamed at him, we've actually been teaching him how the brain works with the way that these screens pull them in, how it affects a certain part of the brain, how it affects his nervous system, and how it keeps giving this hormone hit all of the time to keep wanting more and more and more. And he can't do things else. And then he's not having fun and he's not enjoying it. And he's starting to see this pattern that he's starting to, once he sees it sooner, he'll come to me and go, okay, I'm getting pulled in. And we then are able to get him blocking apps to block those things during the times that he needs to be doing his schoolwork. And then the other times we've been setting in plans and strategies to help him get off. He struggles so much to get off of Minecraft, of which I'll dive into that because that's part of the way the brain works and the brain is wired. He struggles to get off of Minecraft because he plays the games and he's in the middle of a game and you can't leave in the middle of a game. But if you win a game, he really struggles to stop playing another game. Or if he dies, he struggles to stop playing another game because he died and he needs to win. It's this whole brain wiring piece. So we really have dove in the brain wiring piece, and we have spent months trying to figure out a plan of different triggers, not triggers, what are they called? Different like alarms or different signals for him so that it can start stimulating his brain to know, okay, it's time to start shutting down soon. Okay. It's time to start thinking about not playing another game. It's time to start so he has 3 or 4 different alarms in order to get him off on the last alarm. And still he struggles with that. So it's a work in progress, but we don't get him in trouble. We're actually teaching him a habit. And that's the thing. The longer you stay on these apps, the more money that these companies do make, that this is their entire business model. So we can't get upset at these kids that somebody is doing a really good job at it. These apps wouldn't be so big and popular. These games wouldn't be so big and popular if this person wasn't doing their job. So thinking about it from those terms is the one, and helping your kids. And the thing is that our kids aren't weak because they can't put their phones down or can't stop the game. We do this as adults too. I have had to work super hard to put my phone in another room. Often I have 0 notifications on my phone, none, no pinging. My work stuff is not on my phone. I don't have any social media on my phone. And I still find that sometimes I pull and I start looking at my phone and I'm like, there's nothing on here. But I keep getting pulled to it, even though there's nothing on, because that pull is still there, because those things were on it at one time that sucked me in. And we do this as adults. We can't really fault our kids when they're having the same struggles that we have. And these apps aren't just addicted. They're literally designed by behavior experts and psychologists to keep us hooked. And we've never been taught. This is the one thing. When they're on their screens, their stress response is constantly being triggered. There's notifications, there's comparisons to other people, there's overstimulation. And anytime that mentally you are being pulled into something, mentally you're comparing to others, mentally you're winning a game or you're playing a game or you could lose, or there's all these tabs and all this color stimulation and brightness, that is always activating your stress nervous system. And that puts you always on high alert. And when you're on high alert more and more and more, then your nervous system starts to kick in more and more and more. And the thing, though, is the biggest thing is that these screens are physically changing their brain. They're changing the way that their brain is wired, our brains too, as adults. And we've just not been taught. We had to be taught about healthy living. It is so easy to go out there and buy a bag of chips or buy junk food or eat the fast food. It's so easy and it's so rewarding in the moment. It tastes good. It satisfies you in the moment, but there are longer term effects from it. And we have to, at times, so there are times where I will go and have fast food. There are times where I will go and eat a bag of chips. And these things are great once in a while. We have had to learn and work at eating the healthier things, doing the healthier things. Same thing with exercise, right? When we first start exercising, we have to bring it in slowly, get it into where it becomes a healthy part of our life. There's so many different healthy things that we can talk about that we have had to learn how to bring them into our life. And we have not been taught yet how to do that with screens, right? And screens haven't been around for that long. They really haven't. All of this computers and technology has advanced so fast, so quick, that research is only being done on all the pull of screens. And there's more to it than that, which I'll be going into in this episode. But it's really fascinating how it really does affect our brains and how our brains process. And we didn't know that before. And now that we do, we can start learning tactics and tools. Like I said, with my son, we have a plan for him to get off of things he doesn't like to. We have leash blockers. There's also other things that we do that I teach in my support circle. There's all of these things that we can do to help and support our brain and the rewiring of our brain with screens so that we can get the positive impacts, positive pieces of the screens without having that negative impact, with being able to resist it, so that we can still get these amazing benefits from it and really excel in our lives through these screens, but also do it in a healthy way that works for us. Because this is something we've never been taught. When I am interviewed, quite often, this is the one thing I'm talked about too, is how do we learn how to use screens in a way that's still healthy for our brains and healthy for our bodies? And that's where we need to learn this piece. This is a big, big piece. And our kids have come in with these smaller bodies, with these more malleable brains as they're younger, that they're being hit harder than us as parents, even though we're being hit as well. And so screens, let's talk about screens and how they change our brain development and focus. So screens impact the ability to focus, because with apps, you keep bouncing from one thing to the next. There's notifications, there's short form videos. As we said, there's infinite scrolling, right? Even Netflix goes right into the next episode and you're like, oh, I want to see what's happening. And it used to be, maybe this is just me, but in books and in movies, and maybe this hasn't changed, maybe this has always been, and I'm only just observing it now, but it used to be that like I would get to an end of a chapter and I'd be able to stop because things had kind of closed a little bit, or when I get to the end of an episode, there was a little bit of a finale to it, a finish. But now it's almost like they leave it at the cliffhanger so that you instantly have to go to the next chapter. You have to go to the next episode. You have to go to the next video. So we've gotten a lot smarter in how we keep people engaged in our material, and screens really do pull you in. And so the brain starts expecting constant stimulation. So we're getting the stimulation all the time on these screens, stimulation. And then we get off and we're like, what do we do? And that's when our kids are like, I'm bored. I don't know what to do. That's when they start getting angrier. They start getting more outbursts. They start getting more anxiety, start worrying about everything because they're looking for that high, that stimulation, that nervous system hit, that hormone dopamine hit. They're looking for that more because they get so used to it from screens. And then it also makes it harder to concentrate on things that require deep thought, require reading, problem solving, or even just sitting in silence. Like sitting and doing nothing becomes so hard because your brain is like, oh, but I need to think. There's usually so much on my whiteboard. And so if we go into Peak Finds is by Amishi Jha. She is a neuroscientist that specializes in attention. And what she has found as well is that in our brains, this is a part of where our brain, our non-verbal working memory, this is where we store images and emotions and feelings and thoughts and all the sensations. And in this non-verbal working memory, she has this imagery of a whiteboard. So you have a whiteboard and you start putting everything on it. So an argument with somebody at school. And so all of these things in our daily life that we are thinking about, having to get your bag ready for school, having to do your homework, having to remember this and that and this in class and all of these things. And then we add in the screens. So we start adding in all the tabs we have open, or like, I don't know, when my kids are playing Minecraft, they have this other screen open with all these numbers on it. And they know all these numbers tell them like where things are, what's happening. It's like latitude and longitude. I don't even know what it is. And so they've got all of these numbers in their head, plus all of the visual stimulation on the screen. And then they have to remember all of the things that they put on their crafting table in order to make and build and do, and where they found things. They have to remember the map in their head. The amount of things that go in their whiteboard just from a video game is astronomical, on top of just the regular daily life things. And when you have so much on that whiteboard, you struggle to focus, you struggle to keep attention. So we do have kids with ADHD and focus, and there are a lot of amazing strategies for them. The strategies that we would use for the screen with the whiteboard is slightly different because what it is that we're giving ourselves so much visual stimulation. At the same time, I'd be very curious to think of some of these kids that have attention struggles, where how much do they visually take in all the time? How much is in on their whiteboard that isn't even screen related? But then we add in screens, right? We add in every social post and every like and every comment and every video and all of the information that we take in, which on one hand is so friggin' phenomenal, because for me, who loves to dive down rabbit holes and go so deep into research and all these things, I can do so much more now with that, with audiobooks, with podcasts, with diving into research. Once I find things in audiobooks or podcasts, or some that I listen to are by neuroscientists, and then I'll dive into all of the research that they suggest and the research modules, or projects, or papers. And I can go through all of these things and I love it. And it can go on my whiteboard, but I need to make sure that I am putting into practice the things that help to clear and calm my whiteboard. And that's a step we don't do. I mean, she talks about it in her book, and this, I teach this in my sports circle. And this is, my kids do it. It's part of their morning routine. It's part of their day routine. It's part of our routine when we are done from our 9 to 12. We add in these strategies in order to clear our whiteboard. So do you see what I'm saying? We need to really work with these screens because they are so powerful and so beneficial, but we also need to make sure that the brain, the rewiring of our brain, the way that our brain's taking in information is done in a way that isn't like overwhelming our entire system, isn't overtaxing it. And so this is where like you might start noticing, so you may have a child that already struggles to start tasks or follow directions or stay engaged in schoolwork. What you will find is when they've been on screens, those things increase, those struggles increase. Or somebody who does not have those struggles, they might start appearing. And we're starting to see more like, well, I'm starting to see more where I'm having clients who are like, oh yeah, I was diagnosed with adult ADHD and I could focus really well as a child. And once we start working on these strategies to clear their whiteboard, to help with the rewiring, to help with those healthy habits to make the screens healthy for them, those symptoms often, they go back to how they were beforehand. They go back to how they were more as a child. And so these are things to think of too. When our kids are really struggling to get off screens, wonder what is all on their whiteboard? What do they need from me right now? Like they are struggling to keep their crap together. They are maybe getting loud at the, like mad at the smallest thing. You're asking them to set the table and they can't get off a screen to set the table. This is because of their brain, and the brain is being rewired, and the brain is really struggling to transition to what you're asking them to do. And that's where we have to start teaching them the skills to be able to manage those screens so that they can help us at the table and do things around the house and not get pulled in. Even us. I mean, my morning routine at times, I see it totally going off the rails when I'm on my screens in the morning. I'm like, oh, just let me put on an audiobook, but then I get sucked into everything else. And even though I don't have, it's funny because I don't have a lot in there, but I might get sucked into a message from a friend, or I get sucked into something that still pulls me into the screens, or I start researching something. I start looking up online, and I am less focused with my morning. I get things done a lot slower, and I don't get things done as well. And I get into the office more with less focus, with less drive. I get less done in the office, and I feel like my head's going in tons of different directions. So this is also happening in our kids, and it's happening in us. And when it happens in us, then we struggle to manage when our kids are struggling because we're already not at our best. So I did touch on the attention just now, which is part of your executive functioning system. That is, the executive functioning is the way that your brain, it's the CEO of your brain. It's the way that your brain manages your daily activities. It manages your emotions and moods and how you do things in your daily life, how your focus is, how you're perceiving things in your environment, how you're able to shift and transition and manage your time and plan things and organize and make decisions. This is all your executive functioning system. And when you're on screens, we just spoke about the attention issues where their brains are used to jumping from one thing to the next. So focusing on one thing at a time becomes difficult for them. So if we also dive into, I did speak of this with Anishi Jaw's work as well, with the nonverbal working memory, they may struggle to start visualizing steps in their head because their whiteboard is so full. So with your nonverbal working memory, part of what it does is it keeps visuals and ideas in your brain and it puts it in your long-term memory so that prevents you or helps you. It gives you information in the future. So let's say that I'm about to cross the street. I remember, oh, I need to look both ways. I need to look left, right, and left again to make sure a car is not coming. That's for countries that drive on the right side. And I need to do that because a car might be coming. And because you are visually in your brain remembering times where cars have come down the road as you were about to step out onto the street. If your nonverbal working memory is either struggling, which is an executive functioning struggle, or you have so much on that whiteboard visually that you're struggling to add more things to it, then you struggle to visualize steps of things that you're working on ahead of time because you're struggling. It's the hindsight and foresight is what your nonverbal working memory helps you with. And so we start seeing that kids struggle with planning and organization. These things become harder when they've been on screens without learning tools and strategies in order to help their whiteboard to clear. And then we get into another executive functioning skill, which is inhibition. This is where they need to stop themselves and pause. And so they actually need to first have the attention. Where should my attention be? They need to first perceive they should be doing something else, have their attention on the right thing, pause, and make a decision to stop what they're doing. And this is where we all struggle. This is where I even go to my phone after I don't have social media on it and notifications because I keep just getting pulled without even thinking. All of a sudden, my phone's in my hand. I'm like, how did that even get there? So this happens with our kids too. And we need to break these cycles, break that hold that our phone has on us in order for us to use our phone responsibly when we need to, and in order to, in our careers and our jobs and all of the things we love to do. And we need to start learning that skill. And if not, then inhibition becomes a struggle. And for kids who have inhibition struggles already, so this is where it's interesting. My one child, it took us a lot less time to figure out a plan for him to get off of screens, and he's a lot better. He still struggles sometimes. I notice he struggles when he's more tired, when his executive functioning system's been taxed, things like that. But the other child of mine that already has inhibition struggles, where he will just yell at people without thinking or hits or has outbursts, which are so much far and few between. But those are all inhibition things where they blurt things out or have to touch different things of people's, or, these are all inhibition. And when a child already has inhibition struggles, they are most likely going to really struggle to get off of screens. And an adult, right? Us as well. Any adult that has struggles with inhibition is also going to have struggles managing themselves to get off of screens when they need to get off of screens. So why does this matter? When a child struggles with these brain functions, everything feels harder. Everything. Their homework, listening to anything, listening to what you're asking of them or somebody else's or the teacher, problem solving. And when things feel harder, their anxiety goes up, their outbursts go up, they get bigger emotions. So let's dive into the third thing that I have, which I have kind of alluded to already, is our nervous system is in overdrive. So stress kind of becomes our default mode when we're on computers all the time. So if we think of our nervous system like a muscle, the more that you work it, the more that you use it, it becomes stronger and quicker to react, just like our muscles. And so every time that we're on a video game, anytime that we're on a screen, we're reading emails. There could be emails that are like stressing us out, or we're really intent on like answering them, or we want to answer them right. And we're getting the perfectionism and want to make sure we're saying all the right things. It's also hard to interpret somebody's tone quite often, which is where emojis are super helpful. But it's hard to interpret somebody's tone when we are getting the things in text, and things might hit us differently and just kicks our nervous system in. Even just going into an inbox and seeing that we have like 50 emails to open, that is stressful and sets off our nervous system. Going into an office or going into school for some kids completely will be setting off their nervous system. If they are somebody who is sensitive to sound, sensitive to noise, visually takes in so much, it might be so overwhelming for them that their stress system is just kicking in all the time. So it might even be a kid that's not even on screens. It might be a kid that has no screens whatsoever, though they take in so much visually and auditorily. And these kids that are very intuitive, that feel other people's emotions, they might be feeling everybody else's anxiety and it keeps kicking in their stress system because they feel it and it hits their body. I know my son, My one son, when he was younger, he'd be like, feels like there's a ball bouncing inside me. Like when he would be beside this one boy who his parents were going through a divorce, super nice parents. They really worked hard together, but this son was really struggling with this divorce. And the anger in him was palpable. And my son, anytime he'd be near him, was just like, boom, 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 this basketball going on inside him. That's kicking in his nervous system. So that has nothing to do with screens. Screens definitely add to it. Every time there's a notification, ping, stress system hits, right? Anytime there's like a new shift in a video game or a new light color comes up bright on your screen, or a new button, or the next video, or, oh my gosh, this is ending, I need another one to start. That's all your nervous system kicking in. But there's all these things outside as well that do kick in your nervous system. And when we are kicking into our nervous system so much, our relaxing system, our vagus nerve, our relaxing nervous system starts getting so overpowered, and it becomes weaker and it stops kicking in. So it gets to the point where our bodies don't know how to relax. So when this nervous system becomes so strong, we don't know how to relax. That vagus nerve is never kicking in. And you'll know that that nerve is kicking in because it could be things like you're snoring or mouth breathing. If you're mouth breathing in the night, then you're even while in your sleep kicking into a stress state. You wake up feeling dry mouth, or like you have socks in your mouth, or you actually like, because it's like so dry. That's when we know that you're shifting more and more into your stress nerve, and when you can't kick out in the day. So anxiety just might be all of the time because they cannot kick out of that stress nerve. And so it's really important for us to be diving into that. Now, when your stress nerve kicks in, your body actually thinks you're being chased by a lion or a bear. And when you're being chased by the lion or bear, you don't need to stop and eat a meal, and you don't need to have a poop. So your colon slows down and your digestive system slows down. And a big thing, this is so important, 90% of your serotonin is created and released in your gut. Serotonin is your happy, feel-good, anti-anxiety hormone. Anti-anxiety pills, depression pills, are synthetic serotonin. There's a small part of it in your brain, like 10, 15%, and we'll go like 80 to 90% of it is in your gut, and it needs to get released in your gut. But when your nervous system shuts down your digestive system, then we cannot be dispersing this serotonin. And that alone increases anxiety. So it's like this whole vicious cycle, right? Nervous system's getting kicked in, gut slows down, gut slows down the serotonin, which stresses the body more and puts your nervous system, taxes it more. So you're living in your nervous system more because your serotonin's not having you calm and happy, which is decreasing even more of your serotonin being released in your gut. Crazy, eh? And there's all kinds of other things that do impact the gut with anxiety as well. That is the most important one for us to really focus on today. So if your child has anxiety and your child has gut issues, they're either on the bathroom a lot, or they have constipation, or they need to avoid certain foods because of what they do to their body, or they have food sensitivities, food allergies, then you may find that those kids also have more anxiety because the gut is letting you know that it's in distress. So it's like this, which comes first? So you end up going to a gut specialist, but if you never work on the nervous system to calm it down, the gut specialist can only make so much progress because your nervous system keeps shutting down the gut. And if you're solely working on the nervous system, but not working on the gut at all, then the gut is probably like struggling and needs some more support. So it is putting the nervous system into a state of stress. So it's all these puzzle pieces that we need to be working on, and which puzzle piece we start with different people is different based on where we need to go. So if somebody's coming to me with anxiety, I go through like tons of questions with them about like their gut, their hormones, their sleep, their anxiety, what stresses them, like all kinds of questions. I go through this huge questionnaire, and we will figure out where we're going to start with that person. We'll start off on like their physical activity, on their nutritional stuff, on their social stressors, all of these things, the way their executive functioning brain works. These are all things that we are going to take into account and trying to figure out where do we start with this individual. The thing is we won't stay on that one piece all the time. We're going to go from there and a little bit more in this one and a little bit more in another one, because we need to be working on the different puzzle pieces in order for the puzzle pieces to eventually fit into the puzzle. We can't just work on one at a time. And so the last one that I do have is environmental toxins in worsening anxiety. And I've spoke about this on many other episodes as well, is that we are growing more and more exposed to environmental toxins. So the Cold War, way less environmental toxins than we have now. Plastics, synthetic fragrances, pesticides, all of these disrupt our hormones and our nervous system. Now, you already know the importance of your nervous system. So your hormones, there are 50 hormones that your stress system manages. Mood regulation, your short-term memory, healing, long-term and short-term healing, your reproductive sex organs, your cholesterol, blood pressure, all kinds of things for your actual like cycle, reproductive, menopause, all of that. There's so many different hormones in there. Sleep is another one, body healing, nervous system healing, how your body repairs, growth hormone, all kinds of things. No, growth hormone is not part of the stress one, but all of these are really important to how your body functions and manages. And these environmental toxins disrupt them. Synthetic fragrances, they can be found in so many things because synthetic fragrances are trademarked because a fragrance is a secret ingredient. We can't let other people know what our fragrance is. So because it's trademarked and a secret, so that's where the movie Stink is huge in helping you see and understand how much environmental toxins do affect our health. And it's found in everything like air fresheners, candles, laundry detergents, all kinds of things, all your household cleaners, your toothpaste, so many of these things. And in us slowly, one by one, changing things out. When something finished in our house, we replaced it with a non-toxic version. The difference in my son and I has been huge. I really do struggle to go down a soap aisle. It drains my energy. I also become Medusa. I'm a horrible person after I've been down a soap aisle. I get very short, very irritated, and I really just need to come home and lay down. It's horrible. And it's because of these synthetic fragrances. Now, is everybody affected as hard as myself and my one son? No. But my one son, that's where you'll see the anger will come out quick. He might just instantly turn around and hit somebody or yell at them if certain synthetic fragrances he's exposed to. As our systems have gotten stronger, as our nervous system's gotten stronger, our guts have gotten healthier, our whole stress system has become stronger for both of us. We are not affected as harshly by them, though we don't also have them in our house. So when we do go out and we are hit by other people that do have fabric softeners and stuff, we're not as, it doesn't take us down as fast and as hard as it used to. So we're able to withstand it more and more. That doesn't mean it's not affecting us. And so with kids with anxiety, it has been fascinating with some of the kids that I've worked with when parents start changing out some of the synthetic fragrances, they notice a difference in their child's anxiety. And this has nothing to do with screens. This has nothing to do with your nervous system. This has everything to do with the hormones and the hormone disruptors in these environmental toxins. I have one client where with toothpaste, they switched their toothpaste to he's in the UK. So it was a Dr. Bronner. In Canada, United States, we can get Dr. Bronner or Green Beaver. So in our house, we use Green Beaver. I love Frosty Mint. It kind of reminds me of the same minty taste as Crest and stuff. My other kids use the other mint. I think it's called spearmint because it was too spicy for them as young kids, but now they actually are moving towards ours. So he switched them out with his kids. And when he switched it out, he's like, wow, bedtime became easier. He couldn't believe it. And they switched out their laundry soap and he started noticing some decreases in anxiety in one of his kids that's very anxious, but he did notice the moods and like his kids were able to focus better. So it is very fascinating how much this can affect our lives and we don't really consider it. Also in clothing, the fire retardants in clothing. So all kids' pajamas, most kids' pajamas have fire retardants in them. When they have fire retardants, that means that while that kid is sleeping, same thing with a lot of bed sheets and different things, that they have some environmental toxins in them. They have synthetic fragrances, or no, those aren't synthetic fragrances. They're an environmental toxin, a hormone disruptor in them. And that affects the hormones of our kids, which can affect the anxiety as well as other hormones in them. And so that's one reason I actually buy used clothes for my kids most of the time. I usually buy used because it takes, there's two numbers going on in my head and they're completely drastically different numbers. And I don't know which one's true. Is it 50 some odd loads or like 350 loads? It might be the 300 that those clothes need in order to get all of the toxins out of them. Thing is that those toxins are then going into our waterways. And so when it gets into our water too, it affects it, which is which is why we have a reverse osmosis water system in our house, which it even filters out all of the prescriptions that are in the water. I will say too, my son's anxiety changed within 24 hours of us switching to a reverse osmosis filtration system. And in switching to that, like it filters out all of the pill, Viagra, basically all the antidepressants, any anxiety pills, any of the prescriptions that people pee out that end up in our water, our city's water, and we drink again. It filters those out. So that has been huge, as well as it filters out like lead, which we have a lot of lead pipes in where I am in Ontario, in Canada. And so it helps it takes the lead out and everything as well of our water. But I did notice a big change in my son once we did change our water. And my kids notice it hugely. And we don't drink water out of plastic bottles. We always bring our water bottles everywhere that we go, because the disruptors, the hormones, the synthetic hormones leach from that plastic into the water. And so we end up drinking that. There's studies that go into that as well. If you do want a book on that, let me know. It's actually all about sperm, because sperm regenerates every 6 months. So they were doing tests of guys drinking like water bottles out of plastic. And then once they stopped decreasing their hormone disruptors, their sperm totally changed to be healthier. Like these were guys that were having fertility issues. I know there's other issues for fertility issues, but they noticed a drastic change when they stopped drinking from plastic water bottles and changed a lot of their certain hormone disruptors and stuff that they were ingesting, because the sperm does change. Eggs don't regenerate themselves every 6 months. Is it 3 to 6 months for sperm? I'm not sure. But if you do want that book, let me know and I will dig that one out. I'd have to dive in to look that one up for you. But it's quite fascinating, the research and being able to actually see the changes internally in the body on that one and how it really does affect. But it can really affect anxiety. So if your child's stress system is already taxed, and then their body is overloaded with toxins, it just further dysregulates their system. And then it's no wonder that anxiety is increasing, right? Think of all these things. Screens have increased for our kids. Environmental toxins have increased for our kids. We are in our stress nervous system a lot more, which is affecting our gut and affecting our ability for serotonin to come out. Like all of these things, it's just everything is pushing and pushing and pushing their system more than, yes, during the Cold War, during more so than certain countries that are very stressful at this moment. They have a lower environmental toxin imprint than we have, and they may not be on screens as much. And that is affecting their ability to handle anxiety better than some of our kids. Like, isn't that crazy? And if we think of like anxiety, like an overloaded electrical circuit. So imagine your home's electrical system. Every time you plug something in, like you plug in your phone, you plug in your computer, you plug in your coffee maker, plug in the toaster oven, you plug in your hairdryer, you're adding to the load. And your house is built to handle a certain amount of energy flow. But what happens when too many things are plugged in at once? Circuit overloads, right? The breakers trip, the lights flicker, and everything shuts down. I know in our house, I mean, we are in an 80-year-old house, and I have a heater in here right now, but I have to be careful with which plug I put it in because I will totally break a circuit. And this is what's happening in our kids today. Their nervous systems are like these electrical circuits, and they're designed to handle stress in small, manageable amounts for their body, what their body can handle. The thing is that modern life has plugged in way too many stressors at once. The screens constantly pulling their attention, leaving every light on in the house. Social media keeping their brain on high alert is like this alarm buzzing 24/7. The environmental toxins disrupting their hormones is like this faulty wiring, making everything unstable. And the gut health being compromised by chronic stress is like a power source that's running low. And instead of getting the breaks that these kids need to reset their system, to heal it, to repair it, their system is constantly overloaded. And so it starts short circuiting. And that's what anxiety is. That's where anxiety comes into play. And that's why kids feel overwhelmed, shut down, or unable to focus. And just like with the electrical system, the solution isn't just to toughen them up and stop worrying. It really is to unplug what's draining them and strengthen their system so that it can handle life's normal stressors without tripping the breaker. So how do we get them help? How do we help these kids? And it's not, as I've said, it's not just about get them off of screens. It's really understanding that digital health is a skill, just like physical health, just like nutritional health, just like working on other parts like our gut health. Digital health is a skill. We teach kids what healthy eating looks like, exercise, but no one has ever taught them how healthy relationships with screens. This is a new skill for everyone. And it's not about like just putting the phone down. It's learning how to navigate tech in a way that doesn't hijack our nervous system and that whiteboard in our brain. Just like that overloaded electrical circuit that I just spoke of, we can't fix anxiety by telling kids to calm down. We have to actually reduce the overload and strengthen their ability to handle stressors. So a few ways to do that is first, teaching them about these tech companies and how they are doing their job if the child is being sucked in, not getting the kid in trouble, and helping strategize together to figure out ways to help them work with it versus against it. And one way for us in our family too is creating a plan of when and how to get off screens and to get breaks to help clear that whiteboard in our brain. This is a big one, and it's different for each of us. We all have different ways that we need to get off of screens that we have all had to implement, myself and my kids. What to do on these breaks to clear that whiteboard is important as well, so that they can help them focus better when they either get back on the screens or they get into doing something else. When they're transitioning into the next task, setting the table, helping with dishes, doing their laundry, playing with their friends, whatever it is, they need to help with that transition of clearing that brain when they're getting off the screens. Turning off notifications, decreasing environmental toxins, strengthening the resting nervous system. These are all things that we talked about in this episode. And here's the thing, these aren't just small pieces of a bigger puzzle. You can't force your child to take deep breaths and to turn off their screen, but you can start with making small shifts that help retrain their body and their brain over time. And that's where having a lot of that support matters. And it's not about making kids tougher. It's about helping their nervous system get stronger in the right ways. It's about understanding that screens, gut health, toxins, daily stressors, they all play a role, and knowing what to do about it. So this can be totally overwhelming. I know for me, like, when I went down the rabbit hole of how do I help my son with environmental toxins? How do I help learn how to get my kids off of screens? How do I work their stress system? I mean, these have been years and years and years of me taking certifications, credentials, and reading and understanding and learning from experts in order to do this. And that's why I created the support circle, is so that I can kind of put all of that knowledge that I have accumulated and dump it into there, where it is a space where parents just like you can figure out practical, real world strategies to help your family. When you go into the support circle, I'm adding more and more lessons every week. You go through the lessons that pull you in. Where do you want to do? Do you want to go into gut? Do you want to go into sleep? There's a full sleep program in there right now. I am building it out. It's been about a month that I've been building it out and putting all of the stuff that I've done over the years into there. So it just keeps growing. And it's where you can go in and go to the lessons that you feel you need. Do you need to work on the brain's part of executive functioning? Do you need to work on the attention piece? Do you need to work on the inhibition? Where is it for you? Do you need to work on the traumas? Do you need to work on the stress system, nervous regulation? Where is it for you? You go to those pieces in the support circle that work for you, and then come and ask questions. And when you need support, you ask the parents in the group for support. So inside, I will show you how to help your child and yourself lower your anxiety, reset from screen addictions, and build a system that actually works, because this solution is not a one size fits all. What's going to help one of your kids is not going to help the other. What's going to help you may not help your kids. We need to learn how to support your child and you in a way that's sustainable and effective for you and your family. So the link for the support circle is in the show notes. You can join right now, and I'm in there to start helping you out. So I can't wait to see you in the support circle. If you have any questions, let me know. The links that I talked about for the books and the Netflix show that I did say on environmental toxins, all of those things will be in the show notes. So go down and check those there as well. And I will see you in the next episode.